Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Plains on the Prairie podcast. I'm Max.
And I'm Sam.
And today we are continuing our North Dakota Aces series. And today's episode is on Donald Arthur, is it Baccus?
Baccus, yeah.
Baccus, gotcha. A Jamestown, North Dakota native who scored 5 kills in the air, and then I believe 2 damaged, and then 4 on the ground during the Second World War.
Yeah, so this is our 9th episode. This was one of our bonus ones we found. So we have 2 left, 2 World War II aces left, and then that
another one.
That other one, yep. So yeah, it's so Donald Baccus, kind of an extensive Air Force career is what we saw.
Huge,
so
yeah,
couldn't find much on his specific victories except for a couple, but we do have he was part of a couple really illustrious groups and had some really cool background on those.
Absolutely. So I guess before we start, I was kind of curious when you were going through, I guess when I searched up his name, it said of Los Angeles, California.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume that is probably where he settled, and I think that's where he ended up being buried.
Right.
But yeah, it's usually all that stuff is more documented than where they're from. So,
yeah.
Interesting. Well, yeah, we'll get started here. So Donald was born May 29th, 1916 in Jamestown, North Dakota. So for people that aren't familiar with the geography of North Dakota, that's about an hour west?
A little over an hour west, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, it's a big town by today's standards, but I can assume, back in the day it was, just farm town and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So he enlisted in the aviation cadet program in the U.S. Army Air Corps in August of 1940. So another one of our pre-war entries, and then was commissioned as a second lieutenant in March of 1941. Prior to the Second World War, or I guess before he was sent overseas, he was an instructor pilot and a gunnery instructor at several bases down in Texas from March 1941 until April of 1943. And I think I found he was at Foster Army Air Force. I guess I don't know if it would have been a base. Yeah, probably would have been a base. And then
Randolph.
Yep, exactly. So following his stint as an instructor and being in Texas, he was briefly assigned to the 322nd Fighter Squadron for training in May and June of 1943. And I found that they flew P-47Bs.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were mostly charged with the air defense of New York. I think they were stationed up.
Under the 1st Air Force, I believe.
Correct. Yep. And then after that, he was in November of 1943 was assigned to the 359th Fighter Squadron of the 356 Fighter Group in the European Theater of Operations. So I guess I couldn't really flesh out any because he was awarded, was it a Silver Star?
It was a Silver Star. Yeah.
Was that before he became deputy commanding officer of the 356?
It was during his time it was just so I don't remember the exact date, but he became CEO of the 356 in November 1944. Mm-hmm. And in November 26, 1944 was when he engaged 2 Bf-109s and shot them down. And that's during the account of why he earned the star, it documents that he did shoot down 2 109s. Wow. So that those are the only 2 documented kills that are on record that I could find. I'm sure you couldn't find anything further.
I tried. Excuse me. Yeah, we need to pick up that Schiffler Publishing Aces book and see what they had.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if we're talking about, a mid-war to early late war Mustang pilot, I wouldn't doubt that his other kills were more than likely fighters. But, we've had so many different.
All those specific theater aces are just, it's a lot of weird stuff.
It's a grab bag.
Yeah. But so he was CEO of the 359th Fighter Squadron for a brief stint, I saw, and then became kind of just group staff at that point.
Absolutely. So during his time with the 356, like we said, he was credited with 5 aerial victories against the Luftwaffe, plus 2 damaged in the air. I think I would assume that that's where they would credit them as damaged. Yeah. And then 4 on the ground. Unfortunately, Baccus, it seems like his post-war career was more highly documented than his Second World War one.
Yeah.
Which is interesting considering he was an ace.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of strange. I mean, during that time of the war, I mean, we have seen some really well documented things, but there were so many aces at the point. We were just churning them out at that point. I mean, the list of aces from the U.S. is just ridiculously long.
Especially when the Germans are, all their best pilots are either dead or,
on both theaters. They were at the 1944 point. It was the attrition was really set again.
Absolutely. So following the end of the Second World War, he remained in the Army Air Force and then eventually the U.S. Air Force and had quite the career. Like we're not going to go into it all because we'd be here for probably another 2 hours. But the dude was in charge of countless fighter interceptor squadrons throughout the 1950s. I think he was the commander of a training base down in the South. Like just a
crazy
really,
amount.
Yeah. And I love, and I think I've said in a couple of previous podcast episodes, but let's take a guy like Baccus, who, got his 5 kills, stayed in the Air Force, full bird colonel when he retired. And then let's take a look at a guy like Scrappy Bloomer, ace in a day, like the fighter pilot. Like when I think of the fighter pilot, I think of like a guy like Scrappy Bloomer. Yeah. Gets out immediately after the war. And it's like, but, you got to take those into account. Like, Scrappy started a very, very impressive business.
Right.
And,
I mean, there's countless World War II veterans that have just gone into the private sector and done huge amounts of work.
We will get into that in our Minnesota section with, he flew with Eaglestern. Minot has a Mustang painted in his markings.
The politician guy.
Yep. Of course, we're blanking on it now.
We'll come up with it after we're done recording.
But yeah, so Baccus eventually retired from the U.S. Air Force in July of 1965 and settled in California. Couldn't find a whole lot about his post-war life, but he passed away in the grand scheme of things pretty young. He passed away on April 28th, 1986, at the age of 69. So just I think a month and it would have been a month and a day short of his 70th birthday. So unfortunate, but that's just life, right?
Right. Yeah.
So now we're going to move into the 356 fighter group. So we elected to choose the group aspect over the squadron just because he was the commander of the 356, right. And there were 3 different squadrons that fell under him. So
so the 356 was this famous, I mean, those of you who are 8th Air Force enthusiasts or just European theater enthusiasts probably recognize the name Jersey Jerk. It's the really beautiful Mustangs. I mean,
the colors are awesome.
Yeah, with a blue checker over a red nose. It's just really cool. I mean, I have a model of Jersey Jerk at home, and I don't claim to be the biggest European theater guru, but some of those Mustang markings are just beautiful.
Well, you see, like I'm looking at a thing of Boomer right now, and it's got the red nose, and then you got Stang in the background with the yellow. Like it's almost like the color almost looks purple. It's like you really didn't see like those colors in the 40s, especially on military aircraft. So I think that's a really neat, unique change that I don't know if we saw purple on any other squadron, really.
No, not really.
That's really neat.
Yeah, so it was activated on December 8th, 1942. So it was one of those let's form it up after the war, after the war started type squadrons. They were assigned to RAF Martlesham Heath in 1943 with P-47s. Pretty much like every P-51 squadron was equipped with 47s to begin with.
And would those have been B models or D models?
Probably a mix of both. Okay. Probably moved into early D model Razorbacks at some point, but more than likely Bs at the 1943 point. Then they were equipped with Mustangs in November 1944, which is kind of a late acquisition. Yeah. So they went right to D models is what I was understanding. The Bs were more early 1944, late 43. So, but I did find that the 356 had the highest loss ratio of all 8th Air Force fighter groups. So despite the leadership, it was just the missions they were on.
Did they have the most kills for the 8th fighter, like out of any?
They weren't the most decorated on the kills front, but they just lost the most
Really?
aircraft, by ratio. So not the best accolade there, but they were assigned to D-Day landings, Market Guard, and a couple of the bigger bombing raids over Germany.
I believe.
So they had a lot thrown at them.
Yeah, and they were awarded the Distinguished Unit Citation, I think, for operations during Market
Guard.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and you'll find both of these groups did participate in Market Garden,
Gotcha.
actually. And then, from there on out, they were redesignated the 118th Fighter Group post-war. They're inactivated for a short time, and then were allotted to the Tennessee Air National Guard. And the unit's still kicking today.
Yeah, I think RPA unit, kind of like the North Dakota
Yeah,
Guard,
pretty much.
So
and they started with the F-51s just like us.
Yeah.
I think they were equipped with some 47s as well.
Yeah, so interesting tidbit there. Other than Hawaii, which is not a fluke, but like an exception, because the 47, the N models had, I think, longer range than the Mustangs. Please correct me if I'm wrong there, but all units east of the Mississippi, all Air National Guard units were almost exclusively equipped with 47s. And then all units west of the Mississippi had Mustangs.
Okay.
Really interesting. I remember I read that in a couple of books, and
That's kind of interesting because you'd think the East Coast more densely populated, quicker stops between bases. You'd go the other way, but
you would think,
but yeah. I mean, Mustangs have quite the range themselves too.
And I don't know if it had to do with just where a lot of those post-wars like surplus aircraft were sent. I guess Republic Fairchild, the makers of the 47, was in New York, so it would have been easier to distribute aircraft there. And then North American, that was California.
Yep.
So where they're built, they just send them out.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because most of those aircraft would have been built in 44. Well, even if they were ordered in 44, they probably would have been delivered in 45, 46. So
that group's still kicking in a way. And then the 359th Fighter Group was what he took command of later in the war, right? So it was activated in January 1943, so a little bit later, and not by much, just about a month later than the 356. And it was equipped with 47s, of course, right away.
Yeah.
And they primarily provided fighter escort on their first missions, just like many other 8th Air Force groups. Later shifted to strafing later in the war, actually, when they equipped Mustangs, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
They're re-equipped with Mustangs earlier than the 356 in April 1944. So they probably saw B models and they probably had a mixed bag at some point in the war or that year. Their notable operations were Market Garden, Operation Varsity, and the Battle of the Bulge as well. So they did provide air cover for the ground troops when the weather opened up during the Bulge. Yeah. Took a little bit, but they're one of those squadrons inactivated at the end of the war, November 10th of 45. So quite an early deactivation there. And they were redesignated the 123rd Fighter Group and allotted to the Kentucky Air National Guard post-war. And they're still flying today under the name 123rd Operations Group with the Guard there still and flying C-130Hs.
Cool. Very cool.
So, so cool to see two units. Usually we've kind of had the theme lately of all these, especially the naval groups just being gone,
Yeah, it's something that I do appreciate about, the Air Force lineage is, if a squadron that was very distinguished during the Second World War was deactivated, they allotted that history to an Air Guard unit to give that unit, I think, something to look back on with pride. I don't know if they focused it on like individual squadron members, like if they were from that area, because look at the unit. I mean, as an example, North Dakota, coming from the 367th Fighter Squadron, I believe, or group, that might have the book over there. But Scrappy Bloomer and a couple other Mustang pilots, I think were, I guess, 38 Lightning pilots were from this area.
Yeah.
So
makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so that concludes our fighter group section. I did track down a couple Mustangs that are around today still that carry markings pretty similar, or not exactly to what he had. I didn't find any nose art that he had on his aircraft.
I couldn't either.
Yeah, usually, I mean, you would find a mixed bag of people with nose art or without. I mean, he probably, being a CEO, he probably just jumped in planes at that point. So for the 356 fighter group, I did find one aircraft called Damn Yankee. It's 44-74425. Sounding like you right now.
Yeah, I know, right?
That one actually it's based in the Netherlands, and they actually had an incident last week where apparently the gear had a failure and it nosed in, prop struck, everything like that. So everybody, or both occupants, made it out okay, no injuries or anything like that. So that's number one.
Good,
yep. But the aircraft also looks pretty salvageable. I mean, us with small pockets aren't able to cover that. But you know, the guy apparently I couldn't find much on him, but I read in the comment section on it was on Facebook. I found out that it got in an accident before we even started researching this, and I was like that. When I started researching the fighter groups, I was like, oh, one of those. I just saw one of those. But yeah, apparently he has like a T6 and other warbirds. He just kind of has his own
owner of the Mustang.
Yeah, he kind of has his own little flying museum in a way. So yeah, that's hopefully that can get restored here soon.
Yeah.
And then the 359th fighter group, I forgot to mention during the group section, they had a kind of an olive deep green nose, kind of like how the 4th fighter group is, where it swoops down there on the nose.
Like the red?
Yep, the red. Boomer? Yep.
But that one was green. Okay.
Yep. So that one is called Daddy's Girl. It's in the States here. It's 44-63807.
Gotcha.
So that one was restored in 2004. It's been bouncing around various owners around the States. I don't remember where it is. Mustangs.com is a very good resource for this. So that Damn Yankee that had the incident over in the Netherlands, they already have that documented within like 2 days. It happened on the 1st, and I was researching this 2 days ago. It's the 5th today when we're recording this. So on the 3rd,
wow,
they already had it up there talking about it. You know, project they like change the status. They have like flying in restoration. They have different statuses of the airframe.
If it's
so they've already
change it.
They've already thrown that up there. So it's a very, very extensive database for all the existing Mustangs and all the background on those.
I want to just give a quick shout out to, you know, guys that like work tirelessly on, you know, Mustangs, or I doubt he'll hear this, but Joe Bauer, his serial website is unbelievable. Mike Henger that runs Aerial Visuals. Those guys, I don't think they get, I mean, maybe I know Aerial Visuals and Joe Bauer don't have ads. No. So they just do that.
It's all pure passion. Yep.
And we would be this podcast wouldn't be possible without, you know, people the research like that we've done from those websites.
Yeah. And I mean, some of these people who found that information spent hours and hours. I mean, it takes me about an hour or two to research this usually. Sometimes I dig deeper and get distracted and find some interesting stuff. But, you know, for us to be able to do that in a matter of a couple hours instead of days on end, these episodes are thankfully easier to make without, you know, with Absolutely. Those people. Without that, I don't think this series would be possible.
I can't imagine what research must have been like in, you know, just think before the internet. Like you'd have to actually go to like the Air Force Base or the Air Force Museum in Dayton, or the research agency at Maxwell in Alabama, and hours of pulling out documents and, you know, getting clearances. It'd
be national treasure all over again.
Yeah.
Digging through the Library of Congress. No, so it was a lot of fun. Our next one should be a Navy one. We'll kind of be alternating here on out. I mean, we have 2 more regular episodes, so this has been a really fun series.
I agree.
I'm thinking we should probably expand to Minnesota next year or something. Give it a little break.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah,
this is time to research them beforehand.
Yeah, because there's quite the list. That one will be a long series compared to this one, probably double.
We'll probably have to, and we can talk about it off air too. But yeah. But yeah, you know, thank you guys for tuning in. Excuse me. Yeah, we appreciate you always listening. Please share it with your friends if they like aviation, if they're from North Dakota, if they like North Dakota history.
Yeah.
Just, you know, help us get the word out. Other than that, Sam, do you have anything else to add?
Nope, that's all. Thank you guys for listening.
All right, take it easy.